Have you ever felt that hollow, sinking feeling? The one that whispers, I'm not doing enough, or maybe I should be better at this. When caring for a loved one with dementia, that feeling of guilt can be relentless. It follows you from the moment you wake up through every challenging conversations and right up until your head hits the pillows. But what if that powerful, exhausting emotion could be transformed? What if that deep seated sense of failure could actually be a compass? This week, we're diving into the emotional battlefield of dementia care. We'll explore how to navigate those incredibly tough, sometimes frustrating, and often heartbreaking conversations with grace and presence. You'll learn tangible strategies for understanding what your loved one is truly trying to communicate, even when their words are confusing. More than that, we'll uncover a path that helps you shift your perspective, moving you from a place of paralyzing
Welcome to
guilt
Fading
to one
Memories,
of
your source for
empowering,
all things
sustainable
dementia caregiving.
guidance.
I'm your host,
Because you
Jen
are doing
Fink,
your
and
best,
I have
and
had
learning how
3
to let go of
generations
that
of loved ones
impossible
with
standard
dementia, and I'm
is
here
the
to
most
share the
loving
knowledge
thing
I've
you
gained
can do
with you.
for them and yourself. Welcome back, Fading Memories listeners. I am so pleased that you could join us again. With me today is Sherry Ross. She is the author of Senior Living Made Simple. It's a book and there's a corresponding workbook. We're going to touch a little bit about that, but today we're talking about how we can go from feeling guilty to not feeling guilty, maybe a little bit more confident. So thanks for joining me, Sherry.
Hi there. Hi, it's so nice to be here. Thank you for having me on, and I appreciate everything that you do with your podcast and all the information you give out.
Well, thank you. So, give us a little bit about your background. Most of my guests, probably 97% or more, I'm not good at math, have a caregiving background, but I know you're in the senior living industry. So, do you have
Yeah, a little bit of both. So I started in the industry, actually a kind of a interesting route of doing pharmaceutical sales first. And I had no intention of getting into the senior living industry. I had no idea what it was or that it even existed at the time. But I did sell a medication that was called Namenda, which is for Alzheimer's. And that kind of started to open my eyes about, that whole world of memory loss and Alzheimer's. And so I decided to take a job after that at a memory care community. And I worked as the main salesperson there and really got a really close up idea of what memory care really was. And I really thoroughly actually enjoyed working with both the residents there and with the families. And so I would sit across from these families and it was very eye-opening, to hear their stories and to, understand why they were panicking and exhausted and stressed and kind of what was going on with their lives and their loved ones. Eventually, I moved on to a company that handled independent assisted living and memory care, all three. And I became a sales specialist, and I kind of worked all around the country for this company at their different locations. So, again, I mean, I got to see hundreds and hundreds of families, and understanding what they were going through and helping them along this journey of finding, the best care for their loved ones and seeing what they were going through. And, after I kind of left the company, I decided to go ahead and write this book, Senior Living Made Simple, because it just seemed like so many families came to me with the same questions and the same worries and the same, issues. So, and they weren't coming to me necessarily prepared for this journey. A lot of it would
I
just
was
kind
one?
of happen. Yeah. And most people, I mean, you don't prepare like you would plan for a vacation or plan for retirement or plan for a wedding. You avoid this topic sort of because it's not that fun.
Nope.
And you don't always, you don't think about it, and you don't expect that you or your loved one are going to get older and like age and potentially have dementia. Just it's kind of a morbid conversation to have. So yeah, most people come unprepared. Maybe their parent has walked out the front door in the middle of the night and knocked on their neighbor's door, or they have gotten to the point where they just cannot live in the home anymore, or they're noticing signs of just really bad confusion, and noticing that their loved one maybe just isn't feeling like they belong in their own skin. And so they're not prepared, but they do come and they need a lot of guidance and help. So that's what I was there for. And anyway, that's why I wrote the book, because I just wanted to put all that information into one place and include a lot of stories along the way of what things that I've witnessed over the course of 15 years doing this. I will state I am not a doctor, I'm not a clinician, so my book is based on my experiences and all of the people that I've worked with over the years. And so I think it's a valuable resource for people that are sort of planning ahead or stuck in the middle of all this, and trying to deal with it right now.
Maybe they find themselves where I was at. My father was on hospice. I knew my mom and I would not be good housemates if even without Alzheimer's. So with Alzheimer's, it was an absolute no way. I knew at the end of a week, one or both of us would be dead. So I started looking at memory care residences, and the one closest to me was definitely a no go. It was just very depressing. I think part of it was the way the building was oriented. It was just dark and dreary, and it just didn't do it for me. So I went to the next town over, and I have told this story before, but I'm the cautionary tale on what not to do. Because when the salesperson like you and the executive director said that they could work with me so my mom could keep her dog, I could not give them a deposit fast enough. I never checked Google ratings, any state legal thing. I still barely know where to go look for like state licensing things and complaints and all of that stuff. So thankfully, my gut was good, and it was an excellent experience for all of us. I mean, as excellent as it can be, but we didn't really have any issues.
Well, that's you're very lucky, because sometimes it does take a couple tries to find the right place, and that's again why it's so important to kind of get this going prior to having to do it quickly, right?
Yeah.
To make that mistake and have to move your loved one,
Ugh.
the once. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it took her 6 weeks to acclimate, and those 6 weeks were absolute hell. Once she did, it was easy, but the first 6 weeks, I could not imagine starting over. Oh God,
Oh
no.
God. Yeah, no, it's rough that
But
first few weeks for sure.
but even knowing it was the right choice, even now she's been gone 5.5 years, there's still that guilty feeling because it's not what she wanted. She was determined to not be a burden and live in her home forever.
Right.
I was like,
That's
lady, those are mutually exclusive. Is there a
yeah.
choice C, please?
I mean, most people, that's obviously what they want to do, is to stay in their house, and that totally makes sense. Like, you don't want to, have to move and go to a community. It's not necessarily what you imagined for yourself. But I cannot tell you how many times I've worked with, daughters and sons and spouses who were just, "Oh God, my mom, I promised her I was not gonna move her," but you're actually, when you do move them, you start to understand that your loved one's actually like thriving and safe, and you guys aren't like this, butting heads, and then that guilt of moving them kind of gives way to kind of a sigh of relief.
Yeah.
And you're not, people need to understand you're not abandoning them. You're actually just you're surrounding them with more care and more love, and you're also protecting your own health so that you can still show up for them and for others. And you're still the caregiver, but like in a different way. now. So in a way that's probably supporting your loved one a lot more and giving you that sense of calm and peace and able to sleep. So,
Yeah. I
um,
always told people I was the captain of mom's care team because I witnessed, and I'm sure we could probably do a whole episode on the horror stories of families and their opinions.
oh
Um,
yes. For
uh,
sure.
I have to save that for a paid subscription or something. But I witnessed people being very demanding and then leaving, and I'm like, how
Mm,
dumb are you? You just like irritated at best these people who have to take care of your loved one and then you left. Like,
yeah,
that's pretty trusting. And what kind of, entitled, like, I know these places are expensive, I see the money coming out of my mom's trust account as well. But it was a real education and not how not to be. And
absolutely.
so that's what I was like, okay, no, I'm in charge of everybody that's taking care of my mom. And that's kind of how we worked the whole time. And
Which
my
is
mom
great.
survived.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I will tell you, the families that, were understanding and supportive and, the caregivers have such a hard job. And I would not want to do that job. I mean, they don't get paid enough.
Mm-mm.
It's exhausting. You have to be so patient. And so they're doing their best, right? Just like we are. But you got to support them and you have to understand that they're doing their job and I will tell you, yeah, behind the scenes, we did support the residents in a probably slightly different way when the families treated everyone with respect and dignity. So just a little gentle reminder for those of you who do have someone in assisted living or memory care, it's important to treat the people there with kindness.
Yeah, they don't work for you. They technically work for your loved one.
Exactly.
Even though you're the one kind of in charge of the whole.
Yeah,
that
I
was
know.
that was how I looked at it. I'm like, if we had tea or a snack or whatever, I always took care of the dish. At least put the dishes in the sink, or if I could find the sponge, I would, because those things aren't always left out. I would take care. It was like I would take care of it if we were in my home. Like, why wouldn't I do it in quote
Exactly.
mom's home?
My father-in-law, who I'm in California, he's in Florida, but I just went to visit him and he is in assisted living and he's been there about 2 years. And I will tell you, he's like the first of all, the picture child of someone who resisted for so long going into assisted living. And then once he got there, about I would say a couple months in, he was just like, oh my God, why didn't I do this 5 years ago? This is amazing. And he looks 10 years younger and he's so much more vibrant and alive. I thought he had mild cognitive impairment when he first went, and apparently he doesn't. He seems fine, but I think his memory had been impaired from that isolation and the, lack of social engagement and probably poor diet and lack of exercise. So he is just doing amazing. But I will say he told me that he definitely will buy the caregivers a little something, like little treats here and there, little cupcakes, or just pick things up for them. And he definitely gets very, very good treatment. I mean, you don't have to bribe people, but I think just showing them that modicum of respect and that you care, and showing them that you are there for them, I think is a really, really a nice thing, a nice important thing to do.
I've
Um,
only remember to do what you would have liked someone to do at you for you when you were 100% caregiving. For the people who are doing it, yes, they're doing it for a paycheck, but still, it's still a
that's
very
true.
difficult job.
And a lot of them really do truly care. I've met many caregivers that were really, really fully involved in what they were doing. And, they truly loved the residents, to the point that they felt like they were family, and that's the kind of place you want your loved one to be in. Um, Going back to about, promising your mom or dad or spouse that they could stay in the house, forever and until they died. We need to look at this realistically, because when you make that promise with a loved one, you're not picturing, when they aren't picturing, potential wandering and incontinence and having to have 24 our 24/7 supervision. So, what you promised and what you'd said you would do is give them, the love and the care that they deserve. But sometimes, the best way to keep that promise is with professional support, which means they, need to be in an environment where they can get that support. And there's like no way that most of us are able, whether you're in the sandwich generation, you've got your own kids to deal with, you've got your career going on, how you fit all that in and give the kind of support that they actually need. So in that light, you're giving them way more, by moving them, than you could ever give them when you're so tied up with everything else. We're just not meant to do all that
No,
work. And kudos to those who do, but it's really the best option to move.
I always just say don't make promises that you aren't sure you can keep. And if you are so confident that you can keep this promise, please let me know what's going to happen, 5 years from now, because I really could use a good crystal ball.
Oh my gosh.
Like 5.5 years ago, my mom died at the start of the pandemic. Did we have any clue when 2020 was a brand new year, what 2020 was going to be like?
No.
Yeah. So, when you think, no, I got this, just think about all the wild and crazy things that happen that you just would never have imagined. And maybe that will help you feel less guilty, which was the topic of our conversation today. Although I love what we talked about with senior living, because I think it's an important option that people need to seriously consider more than a lot of people do. But
Yeah.
I don't know why caregivers always feel guilty when we're doing the hardest job with no training, no paycheck, very little support. Why the heck do we feel so guilty?
I think that, because you feel like you're just not doing, like you should be doing it all for some reason. And like, we're not superwoman, we're not Superman. We are just people, we're human beings. And honestly, we can only do what we can do. And that is it. And you cannot be, pulled in every direction in your life and feel like you're going to just do everything perfectly. You're not. So, but, I think that also guilt and love kind of are side by side. You feel guilty because you love them. So that's understandable, but instead of saying, I should have done more, you can say, I did what I could with love and intention. Think about it in that way. And caregiving isn't about perfection, it's about presence, but you can be present whether they're in the house with you or in their house or whether they're in a memory care community. So you got to kind of reframe what that guilt actually is. Um, you're not abandoning your parent, you're giving them the care and support that they need and deserve. So,
I think moving a spouse to a memory care community must be
yeah.
infinitely harder than moving my mom. And moving my mom, making that choice, and that was definitely, I knew it was the right choice. Like, my intelligent brain was like, yes, this is best for everybody. Her, my family, my sister's family, like, we gotta consider everybody here. She doesn't live in a bubble by herself. But like you said, guilt is all about love. My heart was just like, I know this is not what she wants. She'd be so pissed off at me if she knew like I was going against her wishes, because Lord knows we don't do that with our moms, right?
I know.
Oh Lordy.
But then again, they're thriving, more or less.
Yeah, she had friends. She moved in at 74. So I figured she'd be there for 10 years. So after she passed away, it was like, well, had I known it was only going to be 3 years, could we have managed in my, it wasn't necessarily guilt, but it was like, I know it was the right choice, but was it?
Right.
Like, why am I doing this to myself?
I know it was the right choice because it was the choice that you made, and it was the choice that felt right at that time. And you did see good, positive results come out of it, going back to what you said about the spouse situation. Oh my goodness. I had a couple that, she had very early onset Alzheimer's, and she must have been in her late 40s, early 50s, and this vibrant, but had a type of, it was Alzheimer's, but this type of dementia where she was very, very active, constantly moving, had to constantly be walking, going, and and this she's beautiful woman, young woman. And the husband was this very handsome young man. And it, I remember sitting down with him and he literally just broke down and started crying, like on the first day we met, and, wanted to come see the place and check it out. And he was just in absolute despair over this. um, it took him about 6 or 8 more months before he actually brought her in. And he brought her in. She was there for, I don't know, a few weeks. He literally came and got her because he said his heart was broken and he couldn't do this and he felt so guilty about her being there. Even though he came to visit her every single day and spent so much time with her, he just couldn't do it. But then he brought her back home, and then she was there for maybe another like few weeks, brought her right back. He's like, I can't do it. It's just not possible for me to take care of her in the proper way. And he did see that she was getting so much love and so much care at the community. Um, and so eventually he came to peace with it. But it took a really long time for him, which I completely understand. I mean, it was a tough choice, especially when you're so young, to have to do that.
And he probably figured he had the stamina and the physical
Yeah.
fitness to do the care. I mean, I can't
Yeah.
imagine being in your like 80s.
But I think it was almost, yeah, exactly. If you're older, I think it was almost like when he went home with her, he had a caregiver there, or several caregivers, but what he was seeing was this deterioration of who she was, and she was no longer really who he married. She was a completely different person, just a shell of herself, and um, she didn't even realize that she was married to him, and it just became just heartbreaking for him. That I think that actually outweighed the guilt factor at some point, unfortunately. But yeah, well, when you're older, I mean, yeah, if you're 80 and you're trying to care for a spouse that's 80, I mean, I don't care what good shape you're in. You're going to be tired and exhausted, and that's just not going to work. But I've had couples where one of the couple, the one who doesn't have dementia, moves into the assisted living part of the building, and then the other is in the memory care, and so they still see each other every day. And I think that's the best scenario, so they don't have to be really, really apart. They're just kind of living in separate quarters and getting the care that they both need. So I've seen that happen and work really, really well.
Now, did the companies you work for, did they advocate when they moved someone to memory care to not visit for a little while so that they could acclimate?
Yes, in most cases. There were a few cases where they just, we took it case by case, depending on, the person and the family, and the dynamics. But in a lot of cases, yeah, we would kind of distract the resident, when the family would leave, and make sure that they were involved in some activity. And then, in most cases, if they did ask, you kind of give them a little, white lie. We call it therapeutic lying.
Yep.
And just say, yeah, oh yeah, they're on vacation, or they're at work and they're gonna be coming in soon, and just kind of um distract them a little bit. And typically it was fine. And they did okay. In your case, what did you do?
Well, they didn't advocate for that. Because I was still running my own photography business, despite every week saying, this is the week I can go twice this week, it never happened. I went once a week because I was already out of the house. And the housekeepers came, and it was just easier to go from my Rotary meeting to visit mom. If I went home, it was over. Like if I was gonna, like, I'm going to go home and do, X for 35 minutes or whatever, it, I would have not ended up going. Just, I don't know if that was like, I don't know. I don't know why. I'm really organized. I don't know why I never could make it more than once a week. And I think that helped my mom acclimate a little quicker because she, my sister went on the weekends, so she probably had like Tuesday through Friday to be on her own. And I've seen a lot of things online, on social media where people are like, if you're looking at a community and this is what they advocate, like run for the hills. And I'm like, I agreed with that until I talked to Max Sherman. I'm trying to remember the name of this book. It has something to do with butterflies. It will be linked in the show notes because his story completely changed my mind and it's never going back. So he and his wife, I love this story. They met at 15 and 17 in jail.
Oh, okay. Wow.
They were there. Story. Oh, yeah. And I was like, huh? What were you doing?
Oh, gosh.
They were doing ministry, and she was playing an organ, one of those field organs from World War II. Probably not something you or I are terribly familiar with, but it's basically like a portable organ. And she would play the music, and he and some other young men would sing. So that's how they met. That's how he likes to start his story. He knew that because he was a little bit older than her, that at some point they were going to need more support. So he moved them to assisted living. And, don't know if he jinxed himself or what, but he fell and shattered his femur. So their two children moved her to the memory care part of the community. And they basically said, because the two of them were such a team and their everyday existence revolved around each other so much, they were basically like, do not come. You can call her, which he did twice a day. And I think it was like a month. When I was reading this book, which was before our recording, I was just like up in arms. I was about ready to like throw fists for this guy. I was so upset for him. So when we were recording, I asked him if that was a good choice. And he says, oh, absolutely. And I was like, what? And so he kind of explained what we just talked about. And then as they were starting to establish a new routine, COVID happened and he couldn't go visit. But she had developed her new day to day routine that wasn't dependent on what he was doing and
Right.
doing things together. So
I
she
have,
was fine.
yeah. Yeah, and I've seen that a lot. So I have seen it both ways where a spouse, visits, or an adult child, visits every day from the time they get there. And it seems like as soon as they leave, the loved one, the resident gets very confused and like sort of acts out a bit. And it's confusing to them because there's like, okay, here's this world and here's this world, and what world am I in? Like, where am I? What's going on? Whereas I've seen where, there's been a bit of a separation initially for whether it be a week. I always said do a week because it gives them that chance, just get familiar with where they are, kind of just get involved with, the other residents and the staff, and just understand, just the pattern, the daily routine, and then reintroduce, the family back in. It just seems to work better in most cases, but definitely there are exceptions to the rule, and it's not a blanket thing and say, nope, absolutely not, you can't visit, or, yes, come in every day. Like, we really wanted to observe, kind of figure out what the family dynamics were, before we made that decision, or helped to make, the family make that decision. And we always would say, honestly, it is ultimately up to you. Here's what we're observing. Here's what, may happen, but you make that decision. We're just here to, guide you.
And one thing it took me forever to learn as well was not go. So our Rotary meeting was over at 1:30. So I was usually there just before 2. And I would leave when they would start gathering the residents for dinner. So we're doing like 2.5 hours. One of the worst visits I had was we visited for about 2 hours. I excused myself to the ladies' room and came back, and my mom was like, oh, hi, what are you doing here? And I was like, oh, crap, the clock just reset.
Oh,
Like, no, I can't do this for another 2 hours.
Oh my
I had countless guests tell me, you need to go more often for less time. And I'm like, I never seem to be able to make, a second day or a third day, like,
But again, you probably feel guilty about this. And again, like you can do only what you can do. And so, for anybody out there that's feeling guilt about how often you visit and how long you're staying, you know what? You're showing your loved one, you're showing them that you love them by being there however long you're there. And it's okay. You got to do what you can do.
well,
That's it.
I once I there, so, like I said, she passed away at the end of March of 2020. The
Oh
most
man.
yikes time for to lose somebody.
Yeah.
But like December of 2019, I started having like literally 1 hour visits. I would pick her up from memory care, put her in my car, drive around the building, and go into the assisted living dining room. And we would have a nice lunch, very portion controlled, which was kind of helpful for me. A little small for me, but I managed. Um, and we'd have a great time for like an hour. Literally, I'd be like, pick her up at 2 and bring her back at 3. Like it literally was like 60 minutes.
So you did what worked.
Well,
Well,
it
and
worked
that,
better for her because I
yeah,
wasn't wearing her out. She wasn't trying to
yeah,
be social and on
yeah.
for 2.5 hours. That's
But
exhausting.
that's what it is about. It's like you want to do what they can handle and because it's not about you.
Mm-mm.
It's not. It's about, giving them a sense of, knowledge that you're there for them, but do it in the way that's going to make them feel best and not make a total mess out of the visits. So you did you did the right thing. You really did. And everyone needs to pat themselves on the back, who does the same, whether it be a little bit or a lot, it doesn't matter. Do what you can do and what you feel like they can handle.
Like
Yeah,
they probably could handle a lot less than you think. That was
exactly.
the like the barrier in my mind. I kept thinking like, well, you just sit around and chit chat and one Diane, two Diane, three Dianes, however
But
many
they're
Dianes were
they're
present.
stimulated. They're so stimulated all day if they're in the right place. So yeah, so they don't need so much more stimulation from family members. They just wanted to have your presence, in whatever way they can. But yeah, they don't need all that extra stimulation. It's too much.
That's a good point. Nobody has made that point in 7.5 years.
Wow.
I'm like sitting here thinking, duh, why didn't I think about that? My mom thought of me as she thought of me as her best friend, which I always joke is an upgrade. And I would take her out a lot, not quite as much closer to the end of her life because it was getting much harder. We'd go to the park and watch kids, and it was just peaceful. I mean, as much as the shrieking children's on the playground could be, but she enjoyed it and she's out in the sunlight, and that worked really well. But it was hard for me because getting her in and out of the car, I have black leather seats, so we all know that can look
Oh
like
yeah.
a hole. She would walk watching her feet. She wouldn't like hold my elbow. So yeah, getting from point A from the car to like the bench was always a challenge,
Yeah.
but it was
Imagine doing that every day if she was living at home with you and then
no.
having to go with somewhere with her. Like that's what I'm saying. It's just too much. It's too much for everyone involved, not just for you, but for her too.
At least with
Um,
toddlers, you can pick them up and put them in the car seat.
yeah, exactly.
Might have a little battle when you get them strapped in,
Oh
but
my gosh. Oh my gosh.
only
I have
been
a little, I have a story too about like I remember working with another daughter whose mom I would say she was on the upper echelon of mild cognitive impairment at the time, but was like teetering on some severe dementia. So she definitely should have been in the memory care community, part of the community. Anyway, when she brought her in, she was so guilty about, even the thought of having her mom at this community. The community happened to have a program within assisted living that was for mild cognitive impairment. It was
mm,
specific for that. So, we thought, okay, well, let's start her out with that, where she would be in her own apartment in assisted living, but go to programming that was, really, really good for where she was at the stage she was at. Very social, very kind of really, really good routine, all of that. Well, the daughter, every time she brought her mom in, no less than 4 times to tour. 4 times. And every time she would literally ask her mom, I would say like 10 times during the visit. So, do you like it, mom? Like, do you want to come here? Like, expecting her mom to like give her a different answer every time. But her mom would always like, yeah, yeah, it's fine. Like, she didn't quite get it, completely understandably. She had mild cognitive impairment. She had dementia. And the only way that we could that she would even come to the community to move in would it be if she started in this mild cognitive impairment program. Um, so she did. She came in after, this is like her fifth time. Daughter's crying hysterically. She was like about to sign the contract and literally started crying and walked out the door.
Oh dear.
I can't do it. I can't do it. Mom's sitting there just fine, fine as could be, no problem. Well, so she moves in and she did great for a little while, but we realized over the course of a few weeks, she started like wandering at night, walking out of her door and kind of yelling in the middle of the hallway. And so we were like, yeah, she needs to go to memory care. Like, this isn't good. We're
Yeah.
that in the community. Daughter was so opposed to her going into memory care, didn't understand that her mom was in the place where she was. And I think that's happens a lot where families are like, no, they're in denial. They don't want to think of their loved one as being as demented or having as, the memory loss that they do. So we had to basically do what we call day caring. So she would go to the memory care during the day and then sleep in her bed at night in the assisted living. And we did this for, I don't know, a couple of months because the daughter was so opposed to moving her. Finally, we were like, okay, we have to do something about this. So she did move into the memory care. I'm telling you, within like a week, the mom was so much happier. You could tell that like there was so much less anxiety. She was so much less confused. She was in this smaller space now, and she's around people that were very similar to her. So she
Hmm.
felt like she fit in. And that's what we had been trying to tell this daughter for so long, she needs to be around the people she can relate to and feel safe around and feel confident around. And she really wasn't getting that when she was living in the assisted living part of the community. Anyway, finally, the daughter somehow accepted, this was the reality of things. And she definitely took a lot longer than a lot of families take, but understanding that that's what's going on in people's mind is this denial factor and this not understanding that the actual outcome of what we're trying to do here is going to be such a positive thing for their parent or their spouse. So just people need to keep that in mind and understand, but it is very difficult in the moment, understandably, to do that.
The day we moved my mom in, so this was already a challenging choice. We moved my mom in 2 days before my dad's funeral. So she'd been at home for 2 weeks with 24/7 caregivers, which in 2017 was over $700 a day,
Oh,
which is much more expensive than memory care.
yeah.
It's memory. We all know memory care. It's like, woo. So yeah, was, that felt hard because then I had to go get her ready and pick her up and take her to the funeral. Just, I don't know. It felt wrong. I don't know why.
Mm.
Um, and then the day we literally put her there, I walk in, my sister and I are setting up her room. My husband and one of the caregivers were at my house with mom. And I walk in, they had like a side door you could move in furniture and stuff. And this one very tall gentleman resident who was basically wearing flannel pajamas late morning, um, with a teddy bear shoved down the back of his pants. That was hard enough. I was like, oh God, my mother is not this bad. She was not physically in the same doing those kind of things, but yes, she was.
Mhm.
Um, so that was hard. And then he seeing the open door and the sunlight, because that was like on the east side of the building, so it was like darker. He
Yeah.
starts going right for the door, and I'm like, thankfully a caregiver caught him before, because I'm like, what do I do? It's just
I've
like,
seen this happen several times.
yeah, it's
Yes.
like, this might have been the biggest mistake.
Oh no.
Fortunately, we didn't have any other option. So, like I said, we moved her in with the dog, and it did take 6 weeks for her to acclimate. But the day that I showed up and she was trailing this woman that was demanding to use the phone, which was hysterical because she was also asking for the phone book. Like, oh,
And
so
the rotary dial
yeah,
phone.
probably maybe they should have had some of those just
Yeah,
I don't know, connected to, I don't know, something like, like the play school phones, which
absolutely.
sounds terrible. My mom spotted me and said, oh, come with me. I have to help my friend. And it was like the heavens opened up. You heard the angels singing. I was like, oh my God, I've just won the jumbo lottery, a basket full of golden retriever puppies and a bag of diamonds. Oh my God. It's just like, ah.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
it couldn't have been better if I'd actually gotten all that stuff. And then from that day on, she was like, whatever, this is great.
That's great. Yeah, there comes a turning point where you're like, okay, I think that they've settled in, but it does take time. And so I've had families where they wanted to pull their loved one out immediately, like a week in. Like they're like,
Mm,
oh, this isn't working, oh my God, look at them. And if they had just waited, a few more weeks, they would have seen that it just takes time. Just like, I mean, you have to think of it like if me and you are going off to college or we're moving to a new city or whatever, it takes time for anybody. But imagine if you have dementia. I mean, it's a different kind of struggle, but you're gonna take time to acclimate. And you may never fully because you're really when you have memory loss, you don't feel like you are fully in your skin. You don't feel like you necessarily, especially in that kind of middle stage where you're not fully, fully far gone yet. And so you are aware and it's very distressing, to be in that spot. So gotta just kind of understand what they're maybe feeling too and but let them go through it because that's the only way that you're gonna get to the other side
yeah.
that you found.
Yes. The angels singing and
Yeah.
I mean like that story sometimes still chokes me up and that was March of 2017
Oh
and this
yeah.
is October of 2025. I'm like what the hell day is today?
I know, right?
So it's been a little bit of time and it still frequently chokes me up just because I was becoming convinced she was never going to settle. I thought the
Mhm.
executive director was needing some memory care because
Oh
he
no.
kept telling me, don't worry, she'll settle it. He thought it'd take 2 weeks. It took 6. So,
I've seen 2 months
Lord,
for
well,
it.
we were
Yeah.
getting close. And I
Yeah.
don't know what, I mean, literally, it was like one day I showed up with my daughter and my paternal grandmother, and my mom opened her door and just literally started wailing and crying. And my daughter and my grandmother never went back to memory care. They visited with my mom other places, but never there. I mean, it was so traumatizing.
Scary.
Yeah. I
Scary.
mean, my grandmother should have been able to handle it a little better. Um, but
I
my
mean, but
daughter
but
just
shoulda, coulda, woulda, like it's scary for everybody, and everybody has such a different reaction to it that like we can't blame them, and they probably felt guilty not going there. But in the end, the bottom line was, oh, my dogs. The bottom line was that they were still seeing your mom. They it wasn't like they were just abandoning her.
right.
So I don't know if we want to pause this.
No.
My golden retrievers are having a moment right now at the door. I think there's delivery.
No, I have ways of dealing with that after the fact. So we've been talking about not feeling guilty, especially when it comes to moving a loved one to some type of senior living. Um, Give us a little bit more about your book and the workbook, and then I will let you run off to help other people today.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think the book really kind of gives a very comprehensive walkthrough from everything from how to talk to your loved one, whether they have, you know, dementia or not, about the, potential that they may need assisted living or memory care, and how to even just begin that discussion, how to spot the red flags of whether they do need to potentially be in a community setting. And then it talks about really the basics. Like this is like some of it's like, you know, mm, assisted living 101, really talking about like what every type of care means, what all the care levels look like, how to pay for it, what it actually costs, all the hidden, things that maybe you don't know about assisted living and what to look for so that you can make the right decisions. And so it walks all through that, as well as, what happens on day one, how to prep for the move-in, how to prep for, the first week, and how to really get through those first couple months, and by in a step by step kind of way. I went through it all, and then even talked a little bit about hospice and end of life, and how to navigate all of that, how to navigate all the paperwork and the legalities of everything and the financials. And so because there's so many different components to this whole process. So that's the book, but the book also includes many, many, many stories from all of my years working in these communities, and all the funny stuff that happened and heartwarming stuff. And, it really shines a light for those going through this, like, oh, yeah, that sounds like me. Oh, that's normal. So trying to help people just come to a feeling of calmness, and go through this whole process in a less chaotic way. And then the book is called Senior Living Made Simple, and simple is an actual acronym. So each letter stands for a word. And it's kind of a framework of how to navigate senior living. So S is for support, because we cannot do this alone.
Nope.
I is for information, because we need to gather that information, ahead of time to know what is what in this whole world. M is matching, because we want to make sure that we're matching the level of care, the type of personality to the specific place that you will have them move to, because they're also different and we're also different. So we want to make sure it's the right fit. And like, for example, you don't want your mom, who is a loner, kind of wants to be by herself, into this huge 200-person community where she's going to be going, they want her to go to happy hour every other day. You want to have more of a quiet environment for her, and vice versa, right? So, and then P is for preparation. That's making sure you're gathering all of your documents and your financial forms, and making sure that's all prepared, again, ahead of time, before you have to be in the ER at 2 in the morning dealing with a fall or whatever. Let's get all that prepared ahead of time. So once a parent turns 65, let's get that prepared. I mean, I know it's weird to think about, but I think it's a really important step. L is for letting go. Letting go is twofold. It's letting go of possessions, like all the stuff in their house, like their 50-year-old china set or their beautiful antique table, because you can't take all that with you, to a community. But you gotta like let it go. Just let it go. It's just stuff, and the care is way, way more important. And then there's letting go of guilt. Letting go of guilt, because we cannot do everything for everyone, and just have to know that we can only do our very best. And then E finally is for engagement, which is we still engage with our loved ones even after they've moved to a community. But now we're engaging in a very different way. We're not their caregiver anymore in that sense. We're not, 24/7 nurse, we're not doing all that stuff that was really, really, distracting from the relationship that you can still have. And so we're engaging with them now in a way that we're the daughter, we're the son, we're the spouse, again, the wife or the husband. And it's just a much healthier way to do things in my eyes. So that's the framework. It's kind of just a very simple way to kind of wrap your head around, what we need to do and look for, and how to handle and manage this whole process of navigating senior living. So the workbook it works right off the book. It's just a whole bunch of different checklists for every chapter that I have in the book. It's a corresponding checklist of what to look for in the community when you're touring and what to have in your possession in terms of paperwork and documents, for example. And then every checklist comes with a kind of a self-guided prompting journal. So it gives you all sorts of prompts and you fill in your journal and it just helps clear your head a little bit throughout this process. And I think that's what we all need is just a little clarity, a little focus. And so yeah, that's my book and my workbook. I think they've helped quite a few people in terms of just getting through this.
It's definitely a journey, and I fully I try really hard to share my experience with memory care because mine started out rough, but I end up developing relationships with the caregivers, and so when COVID hit and everything came to a halt, and then my mom passed away, it was like I felt like I lost more than just my mom because I lost that whole other community. So, we talk about the importance of community. There's a community that you can tap into, and
Absolutely. And
it's
it's never easy. It's never going to be simple and easy, right? It's
nope.
always going to be hard, no matter what, no matter how prepared you are, no matter what support you have. It is not an easy thing. It's one of the hardest things I think most people ever deal with, but there are ways to kind of manage it, to help you through it, in a way that's just a little bit easier. But just know that you're never gonna have a very simple, easy time with it. Just isn't reality.
That is true. Well, regular listeners will know that the book is linked in the show notes. So if we have intrigued you into learning more, and I hope we have, you can just click on the title of the book and it'll take you right to Amazon. And
You can also go to my website, which is the name of the book, Senior Living Made Simple. In the website, you can buy the book from there as well. There's a link to Amazon. But you can also sign up for consulting, coaching sessions of different varying lengths, just to, get some advice or help you walk through the process, have a hand to hold. So definitely check that out as well.
well, that will definitely be linked in the show notes as well. And I could have used that hand holding when I was going through all of this because I had to bring my sister along, had to convince her this was the right choice. But I couldn't. I had to let her come around to that when it was like,
Yes.
this is what we're doing. Please get on the same page as me.
The sibling dynamics, the family dynamics is also a huge issue. Actually, I cover that in my book too, how to deal with that because I have seen that on countless, times where that's a major factor in,
Yep.
gosh, and the whole cycle too.
Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing all of this because it was a little bit of a trip down memory lane for me, and it reminded me of how important releasing the guilt is when we know we're making the right choice. It's just not always the easiest one.
No, I know, I know. Well, I'm so glad I got to be here and chat with you and hear your stories as well. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.